Have you ever heard of a leader who took 10,000 bags of food, not to feed the hungry, but to throw them into the desert where no one lives? The world was shocked. The people were confused, and everyone kept asking the same question. Why would Ibrahim Traoré do such a thing? The sun was rising over Burkina Faso, painting the sky with a deep red glow. In the villages, people began their day as usual. Women fetched water, children ran barefoot in the dust, and men prepared to work in the fields. But on this particular morning, something unusual was happening far away on the desert road. Long lines of military trucks, loaded high with bags of food, rolled out under the watchful eyes of soldiers. The people who saw them thought hope had finally arrived. At last, they whispered, "Our families will have rice, millet, maybe even maize, for weeks." Hunger had pressed down on the land like a curse, and the sight of those trucks filled their hearts with relief. But hours later, strange rumors began to spread. Instead of heading toward the starving villages, the trucks had gone deep into the desert where no one lived. Some herders swore they saw the soldiers unloading the food, leaving bag after bag on the empty sand. At first, people refused to believe it. No leader would waste food like that, they said. Yet as more witnesses came forward, the shock grew heavier. In the markets, men argued. In the homes, mothers shook their heads in despair. Why would a leader send 10,000 bags of food into the desert, where no family, no farmer, no child could touch them? By evening, the whole nation buzzed with confusion. Some cried in anger, accusing their young captain of betrayal. Others sat in silence, refusing to judge until they understood. The desert wind carried the secret away, leaving only questions behind. The people waited for an answer, their stomachs empty, their faith shaken, their eyes fixed on the mysterious act that made no sense at all. Days passed, but the mystery of the food in the desert refused to fade. Everywhere people gathered in tea shops, under trees. In crowded markets, the only topic was the same. Why would Captain Ibrahim Traoré throw away food when his own people were starving? Some said he was too young to lead and did not understand the suffering of the poor. Others accused him of showing off power, trying to prove he could do anything. The older men shook their heads and warned, a leader who wastes food cannot last long. But not everyone joined in the anger. Some voices urged patience. He is clever, whispered the young. Maybe he knows something we do not. Still, no one truly knew the reason, and the silence from the government made the suspense grow heavier. Then slowly, whispers began to spread like smoke. Traders who traveled near the desert spoke of armed men, bandits, and mercenaries who had been attacking villages and ambushing aid convoys. They stole sacks of grain, bags of rice, even medicine meant for children. Every time help was sent to the people, these groups appeared like vultures, feeding off the weak and leaving destruction behind. Traoré had learned of this secret. He knew that giving food directly to the villages was no longer a blessing, it was a curse. Because the moment it arrived, it was stolen. The truth began to shine through. The food in the desert was not a mistake. It was bait. By placing it in the open, far from villages, Traoré was forcing the enemy to reveal themselves. The shocking act that had looked like waste was, in fact, a trap set with patience and strategy. But the people did not yet see the whole picture. They only knew something greater was coming. The desert was silent, but it was not empty. Beneath the burning sun, the 10,000 bags of food sat like treasure waiting to be claimed. The wind blew across the sacks, carrying the smell of grain into the air. From far away, eyes were watching. The armed group who had been robbing villages and stealing aid now saw their chance. Look, their leader laughed. Traoré has delivered food straight into our hands. Hungry for more than food, for power, for control, they gathered their weapons and prepared to take everything to them. It looked like a gift. They did not know it was bait. Hidden among the dunes and rocky hills, soldiers lay in silence, their uniforms blended with the sand, their rifles steady, their hearts waiting for the signal. For days they had prepared, moving quietly in the night, circling the food with an invisible wall of steel. The sun rose higher, and the shadows grew short. At last, the enemy arrived. Trucks rolled across the sand, loaded with armed men shouting with greed. They rushed to the piles of food, laughing, tearing open sacks, filling their arms. In that moment, the trap snapped shut. Gay flare lit the sky. In seconds, the quiet desert exploded with thunder. Gunfire roared, the ground shook, and the bandits realized too late they had been lured into a cage. Soldiers stormed from every side, cutting off escape. Chaos turned to panic as the mercenaries scattered, but there was nowhere to run. One by one, they fell or surrendered, their dream of easy food turning into a nightmare. By nightfall, the desert was quiet again, but this time it was different. The food still lay in the sand, but the thieves who had terrorized the land were gone. When the battle in the desert was over, word traveled back to the villages faster than the wind. At first, people did not believe the story. How could it be true that the food was used as a trap? How could hunger itself be turned into a weapon against the enemy? But as survivors returned and soldiers spoke, the truth could no longer be denied. The armed group who had been stealing food for months were caught, many captured, others scattered and broken. The desert that once seemed like a graveyard of wasted grain had become the stage of victory. The town's people gathered in circles to hear the news. Mothers who had cursed the decision now cried tears of relief, knowing the men who stole food from their children would no longer return. Farmers who had once hidden their harvests out of fear began to feel hope that their hard work would finally stay in their own hands. Old men lifted their hands in prayer, thanking God for wisdom placed in a young leader. Slowly, the confusion and anger that had spread after the strange event began to fade, replaced by respect. For many, this was the first time they saw the depth of Ibrahim Traoré's strategy. He had not thrown food into the desert to waste. He had sacrificed it to protect the future. The people realized that leadership was not always about giving what was demanded. Sometimes it was about protecting the land in ways no one else could understand at first. From that day on, when the villagers spoke of their leader, they no longer called him reckless. They began to call him brave, clever, and willing to risk everything for his people. The story of the 10,000 bags did not remain in Burkina Faso. Like fire carried by the wind, it spread across Africa and beyond. Journalists wrote headlines filled with shock. Leader throws away food in the desert. Critics mocked him, saying he had betrayed his own people. But when the truth surfaced that the food had been used as bait to capture those who fed on the nation suffering, the tone began to change. What once looked like madness was now seen as genius. Leaders in other countries debated the act. Soldiers studied the strategy, and ordinary people around the world asked themselves what true leadership really meant. For the people of Burkina Faso, the lesson was personal. They understood now that real protection does not always come in the form of handouts, but sometimes in the courage to take risks others cannot see. The desert trap showed them that their young captain was not only thinking of the present, but also of the future of children who deserved to grow up without fear, of farmers who deserved to harvest without losing everything, of a nation that deserved dignity. The 10,000 bags of food had fed no one's stomach, but they had fed something far greater, the spirit of freedom. As days turned into weeks, the memory of that bold act became a story told around fires and in schools, passed from parent to child. It became proof that a leader is not measured by how popular his choices are, but by how deeply those choices protect his people. And so, the question that once haunted the villages why did Traore release food into the desert? Was answered forever. He did it not to waste, but to save. And in that moment, the world saw the heart of a true leader. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share to spread the message. And make sure to subscribe to Faso Histories for more powerful stories that inspire and amaze.